Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind. And guess what? We are here for another prospect video as we are burning the midnight oil with the two of these fine gentlemen. And so I am here joined by Coach Roache as well as Beyond the Locker Room. Both of them are here staying up, especially Coach, who's an hour ahead. Thank you so much. This time I'm not going to ask you how you were because you gave me the thumbs up last time, and I'm assuming you're still good, even though this will come out on different days, and that's okay. And same Beyond, I'm assuming you're still good.
I'm good.
Okay,
Just watching
perfect.
mermaid movies and stuff like that. I'm good, man.
We're here to talk about the next best thing, which is prospects. So today we're going to be talking about one certain gentleman whose name goes by the same guy. Where if he was drafted at this spot, it's a good luck charm. That would be Kobe Bufkin. So, shouts to Kobe, and Kobe's everywhere. Kobe beef. Let's talk about Kobe Bufkin really quickly. I believe his combine measurements had him at 6'4", or if not very close to 6'4", with a 6'7", I think 0.5 wingspan. So 6'7.5" wingspan, not the biggest wingspan, but not the smallest. I really, really want to get into this kid. He is, I believe, a sophomore, if I'm not mistaken. No, was he a sophomore or was he
The
a?
sophomore.
He's a sophomore. Okay, so yeah, so he was a sophomore this year. Um, and to me, to give a little bit of a, I guess, a bit of a context behind him, he was supposed to kind of, okay, let me put it a different way. Sometimes you have teams where the coach's son is on the team, okay? Sometimes the coach's son gets preference. Well, that is one of these teams. Jet Howard was kind of supposed to be and ended up being one of the higher usage guys in terms of an offense. But if I'm not mistaken, Jet Howard got injured midway through the year, and a couple other guys basically through injury. Kobe Bufkin uh, basically saw an opportunity and took advantage. And he ran with it, and he was very successful with it. The other thing that I'll add is that through the latter part of the year, and I'll give his points and rebounds in a second, from I think his I want to say early February, late January onwards, he shot 55, 45 and 88 splits in terms of shooting and everything. He was very efficient for that last little bit, and that coincides with when he had that bigger role. So like I said, he took the role, he ran with it. He scored 14 points. Overall in the year, he had 3 assists. He had a very positive assist to turnover ratio. And again, on the year as a whole, he shot 35.5% from three. One other thing, other than Cason Wallace, which I found out, small correction. Thank you, Samson Folk, for correcting me. Um, instead of Cason Wallace had, I think, 68%, not 70%. This kid did have a legitimate 70% that he shot at the rim. And as a guard, that's pretty impressive. So let's just jump right into his offense, where this guy, I know Coach has compared him to James Harden. And I think that he definitely slithers his way to the hoop. He is a lefty. Shout out to lefties everywhere. So, Coach, do you want to go first with this one?
Well, I think the finishing at 70 to 71% at the rim that's very, very good for sure. And you had mentioned about the combine measurements. He stands at 6'4" without shoes on. I have said multiple times at the end of the season that we need to get bigger at the guard position. Leo Routens had said it too. We can't have Vision 5'11" anymore. It's just not going to cut it in the NBA. But with Bufkin, I think he has the ability to play point guard and off guard a bit as well. Finishes really well the hoop. Great slasher for Michigan this year, especially when Jet went down and Bufkin's minutes went up and the role went up. He really showed that he can carry a team. Um, I really like his offensive versatility, just his ability not only to get to the rim, but he's got a very good step back jumper as well. The shooting form looks really nice. Bufkin is the one prospect, and I have him in my tier one of prospects, along with Case Wallace, Grady Dick, and Keontae George. Bufkin is probably the one that I don't really see any major weaknesses in this game. The only thing with Bufkin is he's smaller, he's thinner, but when you take a look at just his game alone, offensively and defensively, I don't see any weaknesses. He does fairly well at both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I think everything Coach said. I heard up even up to 72%. I'm not sure around the rim, but nonetheless, that is the thing that jumps out at you, his finishing ability. And we are a team, especially from the guard position, lacks the ability of finishing. It hurts us compared to other teams. I've said it before many times. When you watch playoff basketball, I mean, when it's so much about matchups, and there's people seeking out matchups, you better have big enough guards in this case that when they get bigs on them, in this case, they can hold up on the pressure when they get those switches on them. So when you have a 6'4", 6'5" type guard at your point of attack, that does wonders in this case here for you. I mean, just look at who's left back in this case here for once the playoffs in this case. You're looking at big guards for the most part that are starting in this case. Yeah, you'll get smaller guards coming off the bench, but pretty much, the last four teams, you got Smart there starting at 6'4". You got, Jamal Murray's about 6'3.5" in this case, but built like a tank. You go in this case here, you go in this case on Miami. They're dealing with Strus in this case is about the same size as well too in this case. And so when you switch over those guys, you don't have to worry about it. And the same thing goes the other way with LA for the most part. They're playing big guards, for the most part. And even D'Angelo Russell, who doesn't play defense well, he's still 6'3". What's all said, he's still 6'3". Even him, who doesn't play that much that well defensively, you need big guards, and I think the Raptors have been so far behind that front. I don't know what world they've been living in with that. And so I am hopeful about that. I think he's pretty crafty. I think the word is crafty. I think is the word I see when I see him. And I think the coach's point, his greatest strength is also probably his greatest weakness. And for me, so and I like him a lot too. If they drafted him tomorrow, I'd be very happy with the pick. I'm a Michigan guy. Hey, great. But I think I think if I'm getting greedy, the one thing about him, I don't know if I see as much of a high ceiling as some of the other guys we talked about before. And I think that's the thing. You want a solid rotation guy that might be playing 10 years in the league and he's just going to be solid. Fantastic. Sign him up right there. But if you're looking for a little more spice, you want something that's going to say, you know what? We get the solid guy for 10 years, but hey, this guy might make 5 all-star teams. I don't know if he's that type of player. And I think if the Raptors have the shot, they're not going to have too many shots in the lottery. I think the next few years, as long as Pascal Siakam's on this team, they got to try to see if they get one that can get that type of potential with it. But as I said before, I'm very happy if they were to pick him because I think to Coach's point, he is solid all around offensively, could potentially be a 3-level scorer in his own right. So, I'm good with Bufkin in that sense. And I like his leadership too, especially when Howard went down.
Absolutely, and yeah, so you took some of the words from my mouth. Him being crafty. So I actually wrote he's craftiness with an above average footwork, fairly advanced with his shiftiness and his movements. One thing that was interesting is he had a tendency to do a pretty good job of splitting, double teams, which we haven't really seen that in a lot of the prospects thus far. We haven't talked about Scoot so far, but he does it too. I'm not saying he does it at a Donovan Mitchell level, but he's splitting double teams, and as a guard, that's good because that means that he's a little bit more aggressive. The other thing is that throughout his years in college, he has shot above 50%, well above 50%, in terms of within the line, inside of the arc, and that's a very, very good sign as a guard. I agree, 3-level scorer for sure. He tends to use very long, elongated strides when he's going to the hoop, which is I think that helps because he does that with when you combine that with his craftiness, he does it in a way that allows him to kind of shift defenses from side to side or as he's going down. So I really like his first step, like you said. You mentioned before we talk about his defense, both of you mentioned well-roundedness, and you said his weakness, which by the way, a lot of people say one of his only weaknesses is his strength. Him versus Cason Wallace, we might just, you know what? Let's revisit this actually at the end, but I'm curious your thoughts in terms of who has a higher ceiling. Okay. Let's actually just jump right into his defense. So, Coach, we'll go with you first again.
Well, defensively, like his defensive win shares, they're on par with Cason. Cason is kind of reviewed as the best defensive guard in this draft, along with Anthony Black. And Kobe Bufkin's he's almost a year older. He's really young for his age, even though he's a year older than those guys. I think right now he could be a little bit more polished offensively, and that might be just due to age and stuff like that. But we take a look at some of his numbers here, like 1.4 steals per 36 minutes. That's solid. That's good. Versus Cason though was 2.2. When I take a look at some of his um, defensive versatility, once again, his size really helps. Like he's a couple inches taller than Cason in that regards, and he seems like he has good court awareness defensively as well. Michigan was a team this year that I know they had a lot of hype with Jet Howard this year, but I think it was Bufkin who kind of had the last laugh in that regards because his stock is the one that's potentially top 10 now. Um, Bufkin's point of attack defense looks pretty good to me. He would come into this team, probably would be our best point of attack defender right away, especially with his size and his lateral quickness. Um, and once again, there's no major weaknesses defensively with this guy. It's like you guys, we've all said, it's the strength. That's the only thing that I can really kind of pinpoint. I mean, he's pretty solid at everything right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're jumping into the defensive side of things or not, but I think I don't know. I just to echo what Coach said, like the wiriness does concern me a little bit. How can you take the punishment, especially as a point guard where you're getting picked every second from a center or a power forward? How will his body hold up? Um, but what I think, but I think his court awareness, I think he's very savvy on defense as well too. Which going back to our discussion we had about raising the IQ level of this team, I think that will definitely be measurable in this case from someone like him. We'll see it immediately, which will then help all the guys in this case in the front court as well too. If you have a smart defender, in the back court. So I think I think actually in some ways his defense actually might be the part that we actually see up front a lot more impactful if he were to be on this team more than his offense actually.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen him recover well. He's decent as a point of attack defender. I think he projects as an above average, um, you know, defender in the NBA. And I'll say this, back to the original discussion that we started this with in terms of having larger guards. That's one thing that has a huge advantage, especially if they can combine it with athletic fluidity and the speed and agility and all that kind of stuff. If you combine that package, you can afford to be less than above average as a guard, and still do decently because you have a larger margin for error to be able to recover. In a way, it's kind of like how Scotty Barnes came in, and there are times when, especially later in the year, he looked really good defensively. Earlier on, he was kind of a little shaky, if we're being honest. But what allowed him to do that later on is that he started to use his length more often, and there's a tendency for guys to use their length these days, and if even if you're getting blown by, you can still recover. This guy's not getting blown by. He doesn't gamble a ton or anything like that from what I've seen. But at the same time, it's nice to have that ability to have that margin for error versus, for example, Fred. Say Fred is 100% healthy. He still needs to have perfect positioning, which makes Fred's defense in the past all the more impressive. But at the same time, if he's getting blown by or if he's weaker than his guy, then there's no margin for error. Mm-hmm. So that's your difference right there. Okay, so I'll just jump right into that original question that I had, which is between the two guys that we've talked so far, him and Cason Wallace, that are fairly well rounded. I still lean Cason, but in terms of upside, I'll go throw back to you, Beyond. Who would you pick in terms of upside?
The me it's Wallace. I think Wallace has the strength that I like. Wallace seems like he get his shot and he could work his way to wherever his spots on the floor are. Even though I'm not sure athletic wise if there's much of a difference. If anything, you might say Bufkin might have a little more athleticism. He's a little more fluid in that sense. But there's a certain type of you've used the word before, moxie, like just a way how Wallace carries himself, and I think where he could get himself on the floor, and then the defensive part, as as Coach said, like I think there's a tad bit of a notch more defensively with him that you could see how that translates in the NBA, where that could get him into All Star consideration more so. I can see with Bufkin, who I think just does everything really nice, but not anything spectacular enough where it's like, okay, this could get you to the next level to at least an All Star level caliber player.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty much I'm basically the same. I give Cason the nod, but here's kind of the way I look at it. Offensively right now, they're so you can make an argument that Bufkin might be a slight bit better just because of how he's the slashing ability and stuff like that. And he's just slightly a bit more polished, I think, as a scorer. But defensively, it's like here. Like Cason's up here, and I would have Bufkin here. But offensively, you can make an argument that maybe you could go with Bufkin or Cason. So
Right.
I would still give Cason the nod in that regard for the better player.
Yeah.
But if someone came up to me and they said, outside of Scoot Henderson, I think Bufkin's the second best point guard in this draft. I'm not going to look at them like they have three heads. They probably have an argument. You know what I mean? I would still think it's Cason, but it's not something in a left field.
Bingo. Yeah, no, I agree. I also think that while I think Kobe has more flash and pizzazz to his game in terms of creativity, that isn't the only way to be creative. And as you were saying, if strength is such an issue, although I think he's in shoes, out of shoes, I think he's bigger than Kobe Bufkin, or sorry, bigger than Cason Wallace, I should say. Without the strength, it's harder to not get to your spots, but maintain your spot. That's probably the best way to put it. And I think that Cason Wallace, he always got to his spots. I think at the NBA level, he can maintain that spot a lot easier as a rookie. Nearly every single rookie, even if they come in with an NBA body, will still need to gain space because you're dealing with it's a whole different ball game. But yeah, so that's where I give Cason the edge, and I keep seeing Cason kind of around our orbit, so to speak, falling sometimes, a little bit higher sometimes. I'm still hoping on that he was there. I know Bobby had front row seats, perfect seats to watch him drain a couple threes at the combine. So hopefully that did well. We'll see what happens. But if not, I think fingers crossed we'll not trade away our pick and do nothing else. Fingers crossed we'll get another pick, and fingers crossed we'll do something. Maybe even we'll get a coach before. So with that being said, I am gonna call a close to this, but it's been great. Like, comment, and subscribe. I think that these have been two great episodes when you see them. Not sure which one's gonna come out first. This is probably gonna come out second though, because I just said two episodes, so it'd make a little bit more sense. And so yeah, with that being said, I hope all of you guys are fine. Last words for you guys before we get out of here. Anyone other than peace?
Yeah, I'll just say this in this case, it's coming down. It looks like for the Raptors in this case, what type of point guard do you kind of like?
Yep.
What type of guard do you like? Because it seems like we're going to be picking a guard. That's what I'm getting out of this. Be if it's one in the top three, or if it's one later down. But some way, somehow, we are picking a guard. It looks like.
Yes, I think contrary to what some people think, I think I'll say this: Bilal is also kind of a shooting guard slash small forward. It seems like that plus what the Raptors have done in terms of the few workouts that have leaked. Because guess what? When you fire everyone, there's no one to leak. Maxwell Lewis, right? A shooter, right? You're seeing a commonality where there are bigger players, but they're not really looking at a lot of. They don't need a center anymore, and they're not really looking at shooting or forwards or anything like that. So I think that that's positive. Coach, thoughts?
I don't think you can really go wrong with Cason or Colby just because it's really close. Like offensively, when you look at some of the numbers, Bufkin had a better offensive year than Cason Wallace did. He's also a year older too, so he's going to be a little bit more developed in that sense. Defensively, though, Cason is a bit further ahead than Bufkin is. So, um, if Bufkin's there, and I think he will be at 13. Cason's the one who I think will go before we select. So
Yep.
if Bufkin's there and we need a guard with some size and with decent shooting form, 36% 3-point shooting in college, it's pretty good. Um, he's still in my tier one. I'll sleep well. I'll just put it that way. I'll sleep well if we take Kobe Bufkin with our pick.
I think, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get in this. There's a summary. I mean, we might do a summary before the draft, but I think it's looking like it's coming down potentially to 4 guys. There's a possibility.
We definitely will. We'll have to talk about it after this, but
I think there's 4 guards that we're looking at here as a possibility.
Yes,
I think might still be there.
And and honestly, I'll say my last things. I think as much as we've talked about Grady Dick and the benefits of getting him, I've actually pushed him down on my list relative to the guards. I think if you get a guard, there's several issues that we have on this team. There's point of attack defense, because if you can stop rim penetration, you can actually, you puts less pressure on the rest of your defense, regardless of the schemes. I think the other thing is offensive initiation, both on the front line, but also off the bench. And then I think that there was one, and then shot making as well, particularly from 3. I think if you get a guard, there's a chance that you can at least address 2 of those.
Yep.
And then you have some, whatever happens in free agency or through trade, you can try to at least get a stopgap for the other one while you look for those things. So yeah,
I still like Grady though.
I do. I don't mind him.
He's technically a forward though, so just
yes, that's why I was like, he's lower down mainly because I'm like, he can address maybe 2 of those things, but maybe not. The offensive initiation long term is what I'm looking for. And I think he's gonna top out as a secondary creator. Okay, so with that being said, guys, again, like, comment, and subscribe. Hope that this was good. Hope this was enjoyable wherever you are. And yeah, that's been a good episode. So yeah, take care. Peace. As you can tell, we're tired. All right, peace.